just get right. Here is a squat. This would be considered a goblet squat, something out in front of you. Some of the key things to think about in squatting is stability in the torso. You want to be moving at your hip, as in your femur, your knee, and your ankle. So come basically straight down, and you're going to go straight up. The amount of depth you have depends on what you want to accomplish and your own personal anatomy. Depends on your hip socket, kind of your origins. A lot of people from Highland Games community probably have some Gaelic, Celtic origins, so you might not be able to squat as deep, and you might have to alter your foot position. So some people can squat their feet straight out. Some people have to turn them out. Try to angle this down. There we go. So that's something to play around with. Something that people can do is just getting on all fours on the ground and kind of feeling that out, what feels the best, moving your knees out in kind of internal rotation, playing with that can kind of guide you for, where you want to be in terms of foot positioning. And then normally when I'm teaching people how to squat, just have them, grab some kind of weight. Could be a stone, could be a kettlebell, could be a plate, whatever. And then just have them, tell them to squat and see kind of how things look. Sometimes people want to have their knees in like that. Normally, just by cueing the knees out just looks a lot better. But some people have their knees, kind of more straightforward, and that feels good for them because that's their knee. But one thing I also want to talk about, don't want to talk about a lot, is knee discipline. So when you're coming out of the hole, you don't want your knees to shift back like that. You want your knees to track exactly how you went down. So might seem like a simple concept, basic, but most people are going to fail the squat coming up out of the hole. So there's a reason why that occurs. When you go like that, the knees go backwards because the quads aren't strong enough to hold that position. So you go like for a weight. Normally also you're going to see the valgus twitch in the knee. So here in the bottom, knees will go in and the hips shoot back out of the hole with a heavier maximal weight. So it's recruiting the adductors, it's recruiting the glutes. So I'm using these weights to help myself out, but I think I can handle it here instead of switching around. So instead of letting the hips shoot back, focusing, just keeping the knees that way, seems to be a trend I'm seeing online. I've been out of the game for a decade here, that people think that knees shifting back out of the hole is a normal thing because they have like long femurs or just the way they're built. But when they squat down, that's not what's occurring. So like, why did your hips shoot back on the way up, but why doesn't your squat look like this then? Like it should. If you can squat down like this, you could squat up like that. That's just my take. I'm open to hearing what people have to say about that. What I think is happening and what I think athletes and what really changed for me on my squat a lot, I was squatting for over a decade, maybe 15 years. And I was preparing to squat 600 pounds was my goal. I just missed it out of the hole with my knees shot back because my quads aren't strong enough. But what I did was do 10-second squats. So like taking 10 seconds to go down, and then feeling every single moment, every possible little main position on the way up. Instead of just like dropping and bouncing and things just happening, just took time, and I was squatting every single day and just was focusing in on this concept of not letting the knees move anywhere other than how they came down. So my kind of thinking is that people just don't have the discipline in that moment. It gets hard. They shift the weight back to make it easier on themselves instead of making it actually harder. So making it harder makes you stronger, makes the movement how you want it to actually occur. And if you just kind of let it happen, let your hips shift back, let your knees shift back out of the hole, then you're gonna get to be able to move more weight because you're gonna recruit your glutes and your adductors, but you're gonna increase your squat, and then all of a sudden it's gonna plateau. You're not gonna be able to get any stronger. You're gonna put a lot of strain on your low back, and your squat eventually is just gonna dead end. A lot of people have like the concept that they're just gonna lift for 2 years or 3 years, or want to hit this particular number, 400, 500 pound squat, and that's like it. But for kind of just thinking about training for an athlete or just an average person, thinking about longevity of your entire life, and squatting isn't a workout, it's just a human movement. We squat to pick up things. A lot of people just squat to take a dump or sit down on a chair, and that's about it. I had a question in the chat. Weight vest for what though? I mean, weight vest can be good for lots of things. I don't know. I'm more like interested in sport. Sprinting can be really good. Some people don't have hills like in their area where they sprint, so weighted vest can be really good, especially early in the season. I don't know about just like walking around with a weight vest 24 hours, or not 24 hours, but your waking hours of the day though. Yeah, I think it's good for running in trails. So that's kind of one thing I really want to talk about, was just the knee discipline in the squat. Your quads are gonna be extending your knee out of the hole. Like that's what you want to happen. Don't want to shift your hips back, coming out of the hole, and recruiting your adductors. Be focused on staying here, keeping the knees in the position that you want them to be in, and coming straight up, out, extending knee. If that's not like a comfortable position, adding, I'm lifting in some heeled shoes. You can wear boots. They have the heel if you don't have the, kind of thought process of having that, or just adding weights. I mean, you could go as far as putting, a whole 25-pound weight that's like about 2 inches or so of a heel. I want to go much more than that. Adding a 2x4 would probably be good, so 1.5 inches off. So that's probably the biggest thing that I don't really see people talking about. In terms of like mobility, a lot of people talk about mobility. They can't get there, but I trained close to 1,000 people just through seminars, athletes, in like sport programs, and then just like here and there helping people out. And all but one couldn't just do a squat without any stretching needed. If you're stable in your torso, the mobility will then flow to your hips. So a caveat of that, ankle mobility, like I have had some traumatic injuries in my ankles, so I need a heel lift. So that's kind of biasing that, but there's really nothing I could even stretch. Like it just hits, there's like a bone on bone contact. It's not going anywhere further. But in terms of people talk about like you have tight glutes, tight hamstrings, tight hip flexors, I haven't seen that, or tight quads. I see that people have a lack of stability in their torso. And as adding a belt necessarily not going to necessarily just help that. A lot of times what I saw, it's been a long time since I was in the gym growing up, but it was just people would crank on the belt super tight, but that's not really what you want to do. You should be able to have a finger or two in your belt, and then you want to push out against your belt this way to create the stability in your torso, and then that's going to help you achieve a deeper squat. So a stable torso unlocks the mobility for you to go down in the squat. So that's kind of what I have to say about mobility. Just become stable. If an athlete can't go down all the way in the squat, elevate the heels, do a goblet squat. I think goblet squats are the best way to start out. Apple, how's it going? I'm just answering a question on the chat. Somebody wanted me to say Apple again, so hey, Apple. Mobility is just achieved through stability for most majority of cases. And the one athlete that couldn't squat, his issue was not anything with musculature. It was a stability issue. He was extremely overweight, very gamer, untrained individual. So once he figured out through a lot of goblet squatting, deadlifting, the trap bar, once he figured out that, then he was able to squat finally. I look like Aquaman. I've never seen Aquaman, but okay. So, and also just like getting good. I was kind of talking about, me squatting for many years and then kind of going into like really slow squatting. And then that kind of helped me feel positions. Like I had squatted over 500, trying to remember, maybe like 6 or 7 years before that, and the technique still wasn't there. It takes a long time to master movement, and especially if there's not like a mindfulness. And I think that's what like slow squats teach, is that mindfulness. One thing I'll say, there's a lot of nuances. Like just because like I'm saying squat slow doesn't mean squat slow forever. I think a lot of the industry of like training is talked about like this one big thing, like that's a secret, but it's never a secret forever. Maybe a secret for like right now, something like squatting slow could help you, and then it might not help you. So you have to move on. I think that the athlete needs to be able to do that, though, to have those positions, have the coordination, and then they can do a lot from there. But if they don't have that, and they don't have like even the concept of what their knee is doing at the bottom of the squat, I think a lot of people don't ever even really think about that. If you watch a lot of the really good squatters, they don't shift back their knees when they're doing submaximal weights. In the maximum weights, it might go back a little bit, and then once they get through like a sticking point, then they'll push their knees back forward. But you can kind of see them being mindful of what their knees are doing. They're not just coming up out of the hole and then just staying back like that, and then at the very end, normally they're getting back and then they're immediately driving their knees back forward. So yeah. The next thing to talk about is bar, just tightness on the back and positioning. A high bar and a low bar, it's going to be kind of hard to see. I didn't bring my tripod, so I'm kind of limited on where I can bring the camera. Let me see if I can bring it over and set it on this chair. But having the bar tight on your back and you're in control of it is very important for squatting. So, some people talk about like death gripping it like crazy. Really, you just want to be tight as you need to be for that weight, so you're not getting moved around by it. So it can help by being like extremely tight. So you kind of like just learn how to be even tighter and like more rigid in your torso, especially for heavier weights. So just do a squat. Kind of your grip will be dependent on you, how you feel, your mobility. I kind of just put it right about yonder way, and then I'm bringing my down and extending my upper back. I walk it out. Typically you want about 3 steps, and then I raise my core, extend my upper back, drop down in the hold, and come up. So it takes a lot of reps, a lot of feeling things out, and then within that, I think athletes should be squatting very frequently. I like to do like every day squatting instead of just once a week. For people who are starting out, if they can, at least 2 times a week, you can get a lot more out of it versus just doing like 1 time a week. Thinking about an athlete just doing a leg day is kind of like crazy. Just think like you're gonna do 1 leg day. So instead of doing just like 3 sets of 10 1 time a week, it'd be better to split that up, do like 5 sets of 3 with maybe like a similar weight, and do that 3 times a week or 5 times a week, maybe a little bit lighter weight than you could do for 10, maybe like something you could do for like 12 reps, something that it's not so light where you can get away with terrible technique, but it's gonna drain you. And if you aren't doing anything active at all, then you work your way up into that amount of volume. But there's a concept of that you're getting, you're stronger, but in like the muscles themselves, and then you're also getting able to put on more weight because you're better at the technique, the squatting. I think like the hardness needs to come from it looking to achieve technique mastery early on, and that's what should be hard, that every single rep you're trying to get the squat perfect. So I think doing reps of like 3 to 5 with shorter rest periods is something that's maybe like 60% of your max. So if you squat 100 pounds, that'd be 60 pounds. So if it's 200 pounds, then it's 120 pounds. 300, 180. I'm just working on my math there. It's been a while. So doing something that's easy, just reduce the reps so you're not in there all day long. And you could do 5, 8, 10 sets of 3 or 5 reps. That's something I did a lot with my athletes. The last group that I kind of tracked, they were able to gain, I think, like 72 pounds in 9 weeks of training. So almost 10 pounds a week, or I guess it's 8 pounds a week, every single week. They were progressing, getting much better in the squat, and they didn't have like a peak. And you can do that, heavier work like at the end, like or like 1 set of just like a rep. But if you're new to squatting, you don't need to lift heavy to get stronger. But that's not forever. There's a point where it stops working because you're really good at it and you need to add more weight. So that's like the nuance of it. And looking at doing just generally sets of 1 to 5 reps is like a good target rep range. So I'm gonna do a front squat here. I'm gonna just cross the arms over and talk about that. Another thing to look at is your own particular tempo, how you feel comfortable on squatting. Some people like to go faster. really drop down in the hole. Some people like to go really slow. Kind of up to the particular person how they want to do it. Something within like athletics, a lot of people talk about going really, really fast. Like your sport's fast, so you need to squat fast. But looking at like the speed of a squat versus a sprint is no real comparison. Like squatting is a general thing to get you strong. Like you don't need to squat super fast. Like if you squat slow, doesn't mean you're not going to get faster because of it. So the main thing starting out is controlling the weight, controlling your body. Well, those go hand in hand. So once you have that and you have the mechanics down, then adding those lots of reps, you can dial it in so it becomes second nature, and then add weight. I would still just stay in a lower rep range. You don't have to, if you're doing 3 reps, it doesn't need to be something that you can only do 3 reps. Like you couldn't do a 4th rep. You could do something that you could do 8 reps, but only do 3 reps instead, and that's going to still get you stronger. Killing yourself in the weight room, especially for an athlete, I think that was my biggest mistake training wise, is I put way too much effort into lifting and not into the sport itself. I did do sprinting training throughout high school and jumping and plyometrics, but I really didn't do enough like technical, tactical sport training. And even still, I was sprinting and stuff. I could have just done more of that. And that would have been much better for me overall, instead of, squatting, 500 pounds. I think I'd call like a football squat at 585. But I don't really count that in my actual like squatting career. Couldn't verify exactly how deep I squatted there. So yeah, don't kill yourself in the squat. I think a squat is a great movement. I just do Zercher squats and front squats now, and then do step ups, RDLs, and that's pretty much what I do for lower body training as a Highland Games athlete. And I think that's pretty much the main things that need to get accomplished in terms of like strength training. Explosive movements can be handled through jumps, weighted jumps, throwing, cleans, snatches, or you could just do high pulls, variants of those. And yeah, I think that's mostly what I covered. I'll just do some squats if anybody has any questions. I'm just gonna do a little bit more as it's getting late, and I also I don't really squat super deep anymore, just because I have had constant issues with my low back SI joint. So another thing of squatting is easing into it, how you particularly feel. But to get to like a point, if you have like an off season of a couple months, working yourself, so the last 3 weeks where you're squatting every day, I think that's like a good goal to like work towards. Maybe not you're maxing out, but just having that at least one time in your like journey of like career to be able to really dial in the squatting is good. I think that's to be very helpful. And you're not doing something where you're not able to like walk at all. It could just be up to like one heavy single for the day and then a couple back down sets. You do that every day. I did that, and I think that really helped out my squat. I was mostly front squatting I got up to 201 kilos, which is like 442 pounds on front squat, which isn't like super crazy, but that was good for me. So it helped me out a lot at that time. I was weightlifting and doing CrossFit, chicken foot. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about squat. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask either here in chat or in the comments. I was riding my bike, my motorcycle, for a couple hours before this. And yeah, just getting into some squats. So I think I'll end the chat here since nobody's really has any questions. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover within, personal anatomy. It's going to dictate your foot position and how far your feet stand out as well. Are out of your shoulder or hip width. And then the tracking of the knees is also going to be dependent of your anatomy. And then, the mechanics, if you have pretty tight ankles, lifting with a heeled shoe or on plates really help out, like immediately change that. A lot of athletes have pretty bad ankle injuries, or they just have really bad ankle mobility, something that you can work on possibly. For some people, it's not gonna go anywhere from stretching. So like myself, bone is hitting bone. When I go to stretch, like there's nothing that's gonna move further. So that just will change something immediately. And then knee discipline at the bottom. Don't let your knees shift back. Hold your knees there. I think going to like a point where that's occurring and not letting it. If it's happening for one rep, then that's the end of the set, unless it was like a malfunction or bad technique. So don't just be hammering away reps and reps with your hips and your knees just shooting back out of the hole. Like stay solid, stay focused on what your technique is, and be really mindful of what your knee's doing. And then just squatting more frequently will help you out a lot. And there's a lot of nuances of what you're doing today and then tomorrow. It's going to be, well, maybe not today, tomorrow, but this training cycle, this month, next year, this can be constantly changing. I don't think athletes need to like focus on squatting super fast. Have your own rhythm that makes you feel good, because like sprinting, jumping, those things are really faster, way faster than you ever would squat with like your body weight or double body weight. So just focus on the technique. It is not going to transfer 100%. So just get stronger with the squat and don't make it into something that is not. Like there's no barbell on the track or in football field. So get stronger, get your technique dialed in. That is something just a very enjoyable process, is being really mindful of your body in space. So enjoy lifting. And if you like lifting weights, try throwing them. The Highland Games, I think you'll love it. If you really like lifting, you'll love throwing.